Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a massive pattern change that is coming to the United States that'll bring a massive heat wave to parts of the country, while other areas see some severe weather. We'll be breaking down everything that you need to know in this forecast, but let's first begin with what's happening across the United States today. We'll begin with the Central Plains, which is an area that we're going to continue to see severe weather over the next several days. You'll notice across the Central Plains right now, there is some convection out there, some showers and storms that are bubbling up. Back over New Mexico is the area in particular that we're watching for some more significant severe weather today. We could actually see damaging winds, large hail, and even maybe a couple tornadoes back over New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. I'll be talking about more on that in just a moment. And then other than that, though, back over in the Gulf of Mexico is our only other area that we're watching closely, because we actually have a 20% chance to see a tropical storm develop over the next 4 to 5 days. That could actually develop near Florida, and it might bring some impacts. As of right now, rain is the main concern for Florida, but we could see some gusty winds, and again, maybe even our first tropical storm of the season, as again, we are 1 day away now from hurricane season, so interesting stuff there. Now, overall, the pattern change that's coming next week is going to be fairly massive. It's really something that we've already seen in May, and that is a massive block or wall, whatever you want to call it. We're going to call it a wall in this forecast, and it essentially is a wall. So you'll notice going into the next few days, we do have a trough back down in the southwest United States. This is negatively tilted, which is going to increase some of the rotation in the lower levels for supercells, and that could actually increase the tornado risk across areas in the southern and maybe even central plains, mainly in the high plains though for today and tomorrow. And eventually going through Friday into Saturday, that trough begins to weaken as it tries to move into the central plains, but not a whole lot of success because of this massive ridging that we have back up in the northern plains. That's essentially keeping areas in the Midwest very dry. However, this is actually creating a very strong southeasterly pull out of the Gulf of Mexico, which is allowing tons of moisture to filter into a large chunk of the Great Plains, which has been increasing the threat of severe weather for the past several days with these little trough ejections that we've been seeing out of the southwest United States. So that's why we're seeing severe weather there. But you'll notice going all the way through this weekend and into next week, that ridge just sits there in the United States. And again, this is going to be our weather pattern for the next 7 to 10 days. We're just gonna have this massive ridge in the central United States essentially sitting here. Now, that does not mean we can't see showers and storms. It just essentially means in the upper levels, we have a very strong ridging, which means the air aloft is drier and also much warmer in those areas. But you'll notice there might be a couple of trough ejections in the southwest United States. This could increase some severe weather potential back through the high plains and even parts of the Great Plains as well. And then once we go into late next week, that's when things become more uncertain, but we might see some more interesting weather as we get closer to sometime around the second week of June. But again, we'll have to wait and see. I've been saying that for the last several weeks, but we've been just sitting in the same pattern for a while. But again, we're gonna have that huge wall in the United States. It's gonna really be preventing a lot of the severe weather potential for a large chunk of the country. All right, overall for the moisture across the United States, you might be wondering, will I be seeing any showers and storms this week? Will we continue to see a drought? I know for those in the Midwest, you've hardly seen any rain recently, but you'll notice here going through the weekend, most of the moisture is just sitting here in the Great Plains, and that's where our initiators are. When I say initiator, I'm talking like a cold front or a dry line outflow boundaries. That's all in the Great Plains, which helps to create showers and storms. And again, we're not really seeing any of that back over in the Midwest or the Northeast. It's fairly dry up that direction. Dew points are in the low 50s in some areas, but overall, even going through next weekend and into early next week, you'll notice overall very dry weather. All these grays or tan colors are representing really dew points around the upper 30s and 40s. So overall, much drier conditions expected there. And again, this weather pattern will just continue for the next several days. And you might be wondering about the temperatures as well. Overall, the temperatures will be quite interesting because we're going to see that massive wall that I was talking about in the United States basically skyrocket the temperatures in parts of the United States. So this is going into next week, right around Monday and Tuesday. You'll notice all of this red in here. That's indicating above average temperatures. And we could see some areas get near 100 degrees here in the southeast United States. And I'm particularly talking about this area here. So in the Dixie Alley area, that is where we have the best chance currently of seeing some areas surpassing at least 90 degrees. We might get some areas close to 100 though as we go into next week, and you'll notice maybe some cooler weather back over to the Northeast as we go into early next week as well. And I was talking about 90s and 100s, I really mean it. This is going into this weekend. We'll notice the high temperatures on Saturday really going up into the low 90s. Even in the Midwest, you might notice near Chicago, just off the Great Lakes there, so just west of Chicago, we could see some areas into the low 90s, mid 90s are possible back down the Dixie Alley. Once we go into next week around Monday or so, the high temperatures then will still be very warm. We could very well see areas in Alabama and Mississippi get into the low 100s. So definitely not out of the question. And again, this block will just sit here for a long period of time. And that's where we're going to see the warmest of weather. Typically, we're seeing this in Texas, by the way, during this time of the year. We start to see those temperatures get above 90. For those in DFW, there's only like 2 days going to be forecasted above 90 degrees for the next 7 to 10 days, which is not very common for this time of the year. We're actually seeing slightly below average temperatures right now there. Now, for the showers and storms over the next several days, I mentioned this before, but we'll continue to see showers and storms across the Great Plains without a doubt. For the next several days, you'll notice that possible tropical system in the Gulf of Mexico. Where that goes is a bit of a question mark, but showers and storms are expected in Florida. This weekend, overall across the country, looks to be fairly dry. We'll see showers and storms still in the Great Plains, just at limited amounts overall, nothing widespread. And then by next week, that is when dry weather will continue across a large chunk of the United States, from the Dixie Alley all the way back through the Midwest, and eventually going into late next week, things become much more uncertain, but there might be some good news on the horizon for maybe some showers and storms in the Midwest at some point at the tail end of next week. But again, things are very, very uncertain that far out. And before I show you the severe weather potential for the next several days, including today, I do want to make a huge announcement that our shopmaxvelocity.net store is officially open. Very high quality and very comfortable merchandise is now available on our store. Make sure to check it out. The link will be at the top of the description down below. Now let's talk about that severe weather potential for today, beginning with areas in the southern plains. That is actually where we do have a slight risk of severe weather, primarily in the high plains for those back over in West Texas and as well as eastern New Mexico and the Oklahoma Panhandle. That is where we have a threat of damaging winds, large hail, and the large hail potential is primarily going to exist near Clovis, New Mexico, by the way, who's seen a lot of severe weather recently. But anywhere in eastern New Mexico, we have a chance for upwards of 3-inch diameter hail. Outside of that, there will be some isolated to maybe widely scattered hail, upwards of change-sized hail, maybe even a little bit larger than that for those across Colorado and as well as into West Texas. And then the damaging wind threat will increase as these storms do develop and become a bit more organized. That's primarily going to be across areas in the Texas Panhandle. That is for the threat of damaging winds up to 80 miles per hour. So make sure you are protecting those trampolines. Trampoline meter today is at a medium risk. For the timing for today, showers and storms will form during this afternoon. We'll see a lot of storm activity in New Mexico. By around sunset, that's when storms will be plowing into the Texas Panhandle just before sunset or so. So right around 6 to 10 o'clock. That's really your best chance for storms in the Texas Panhandle. Eventually, these storms do move off to the east, but you'll notice they become much weaker. They kind of bow out, and daylight heating obviously comes to an end. And by midnight, most of the storm activity will be pretty weak across Oklahoma and as well as Texas. Might see another round of storms tomorrow develop. This could also bring the threat for some significant damaging winds and hail, maybe an isolated tornado or two back over in Texas, or central Texas, excuse me, as well as into the Texas Panhandle. So make sure you have multiple ways to receive alerts over the next several days. And then for tomorrow's risk, overall, not a very high risk, but the main concern right now is going to be across areas in the Texas Panhandle and as well as parts of central Texas. And then going into Friday, we also have another risk of severe weather for those back over in West Texas and back through southwest Kansas. This is primarily for damaging winds and hail. Before you go, don't forget to check out shopmaxvelocity.net. The link is at the top of the description down below. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe.